Hi students, welcome to lesson 19, urban areas, definition, types and growth. According to UNICEF, the definition of urban varies from country to country and with periodic reclassification can also vary within one country over time, making direct comparisons difficult. Broadly, an urban area can be defined by one or more of the following: administrative criteria or political boundaries, that is, area within the jurisdiction of a municipality or town committees; threshold population size, where the minimum for an urban settlement is typically in the region of 2000 people, although this varies globally between 200 and 50,000. Population density. Another criteria is economic function, where a significant majority of the population is not primarily engaged in agriculture or where there is surplus employment. Presence of urban characteristics, that is paved streets, electric lighting, sewerage, etc. The important objectives of this lesson are: after completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand the meaning of urban areas and its types and also the urban growth. Let us understand what are urban areas. Urban is defined as an area with a large number of people residing in it with high population density, an area that has been significantly developed. Urban is in contrast to rural, which generally indicates low population and is mostly agriculture based. Urban area is a heterogeneous human settlement with not only high population density but also of infrastructure of built environment. Urban areas are created through urbanization and are categorized by urban morphology as cities, towns, metropolises or suburbs. Places administered by a municipal corporation, cantonment board or notified town area committee are automatically considered urban areas. The term urban is understood as follows: it can be any place where there is an agglomerate population, that is, communities of 20,000 or more. It is a way of life that is distinct from rural or small town lifestyle. It is a center known for its political, economic or cultural power. Urban area is the hub of change where innovation and creativity are abound. It is a population center that spawns and fosters alternate value systems, that is, diversity over uniformity, freedom over security and anonymity over familiarity. Cities and towns are part of urban settlements. All places with a municipality, corporation, cantonment board or notified town area committee, etc., so declared by a state law, are called statutory towns. Places which satisfy the following criteria are called census towns. A minimum population of 5,000. In census towns, at least 75% of the main working population should be engaged in non-agricultural pursuits, and a census town should have a density of population of at least 400 persons per square kilometer, that is 1000 per square mile. Towns are further classified into different classes based on the size of population. Class 1, 1 lakh and above. Class 2, 50,000 to 99,999. Class 3, 20,000 to 49,999. Class 4, 10,000 to 19,999. Class 5, 5,000 to 9,999, and towns with population of 1 lakh and above are called cities. The census of 2011 notes that the number of towns in India increased from 5,161 in 2001 to as many as 7,935 in 2011. Most of this increase was in the growth of census towns rather than in statutory towns. The Reserve Bank of India uses the same population criteria to define the tier centers, a concept used in designing incentives for bank branch or ATM expansions, etc. Towns with population below 5,000 are called Tier 6 centers. Tier 1 comprises metropolitan and urban centers. Tiers 2, 3 and 4 comprise semi-urban centers, and tiers 5 and 6 comprise rural centers. Statutory town is defined as all places with a municipality, corporation, cantonment board or notified town area committee. Census towns are defined as the places that satisfy the following criteria with minimum population of 5,000 and at least 75% of male working population engaged in non-agricultural pursuits. Urban areas are created through the process of urbanization, which in many instances is accompanied by industrialization and migration. Urban areas have non-agricultural framework with high population density and human structure such as houses, commercial buildings, roads, bridges and roadways. Urban areas are characterized by loss of primary relationship, increasing secondary group relationship, voluntary associations, plurality of norms and values, weaker and formal social control, increasing secularization and segmentary roles, intensive diversity of economic activities, specialization through division of labor, greater importance of mass media, anonymity, individualism and materialism. The first urban settlement to reach a population of 1 million was the city of London around 1810 AD. According to UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs 𝗂𝗍𝗧 report of 2018, 55% of the world's population lives in urban areas, a proportion that is expected to increase to 68% by 2050. Projections show that urbanization, the gradual shift in residence of human population from rural to urban areas, combined with overall growth of world's population, could add another 2.5 billion people to urban areas by 2050, with close to 90% of this increase taking place in Asia and Africa. The 2018 revision of World Urbanization Prospects produced by the Population Division of the 𝗂𝗍𝗧 notes that future increases in the size of the world's urban population are expected to be highly concentrated in just a few countries. Together, India, China and Nigeria will account for 35% of the projected growth of the world's urban population between 2018 and 2050. By 2050, it is projected that India will have added 416 million urban dwellers, China 255 million and Nigeria 189 million. The urban population of the world has grown rapidly from 751 million in 1950 to 4.2 billion in 2018. Asia, despite its relatively lower level of urbanization, is home to 54% of world's urban population, followed by Europe and Africa with 13% each. Let us now discuss the basis of classification of urban areas. The definition of urban areas varies from one country to another. Some of the common basis of classification is size of population, occupational structure and administrative setup. Let us now discuss about population size. It is an important criteria used by most countries to define urban areas. The lower limit of the population size for a settlement to be designated as urban is 1500 in Colombia, 2000 in Argentina and Portugal, 2500 in USA and Thailand, 5000 in India and 30,000 in Japan. Besides, the size of population, density of 400 persons per square kilometer and share of non-agricultural workers are taken into consideration in India. In Denmark, Sweden and Finland, all places with a population size of 250 persons are called urban. The minimum population for a city is 300 in Iceland, whereas in Canada and Venezuela it is 1000 persons. Occupational structure. In some countries such as India, the major economic activities in addition to the size of the population in designating a settlement as urban are also taken as a criterion. In India, a settlement is called urban if more than 75% of its economically productive population is engaged in non-agricultural pursuits. Administration as a factor. The administrative setup is a criterion for classifying a settlement as urban in some countries. For example, in India, a settlement of any size is classified as urban if it has a municipality, cantonment board or notified area council. Location. Locations of the earliest urban settlements were based on the availability of water, building materials and fertile land. Today, while these considerations still remain valid, modern technology plays a significant role in locating urban settlements far away from the source of these materials. The requirements of a holiday resort are quite different from that of an industrial town, a military center or a seaport. Strategic towns require sites offering natural defense. Mining towns require the presence of economically valuable minerals. Industrial towns generally need local energy and supplies or raw materials. Tourist centers require attractive scenery or a marine beach. Piped water can be supplied to a distant settlement. Building material can be transported from long distances. The urban centers which are located close to an important trade route have experienced rapid development. Let us now discuss different types of urban areas. Urban areas or settlement may be linear, square, star or crescent shaped. In fact, the form of the settlement, architecture and style of buildings and other structures are an outcome of its historical and cultural traditions. Towns and cities of developed and developing countries reflect marked differences in planning and development. While most cities in developed countries are planned, most urban settlements of developing countries have evolved historically with irregular shapes. For example, Chandigarh is a planned city, while there are several towns in India which have evolved historically from walled cities to large urban sprawls like Hyderabad and Delhi. Depending on the size and the services available and functions rendered, urban centers are designated as town, city, million city, conurbation and megalopolis. Let us now discuss about town. The concept of town can best be understood with reference to village. Population size is not the only criterion. Functional contrast between towns and villages may not always be very clear cut, but specific functions such as manufacturing, retail and wholesale trade and professional services exist in towns. The earliest towns were centers of administration, trade, industry, defense and religious importance. The significance of defense and religion as differentiating functions has declined in general, but other functions have entered the list. Today, several new functions such as recreational, residential, transport, mining, manufacturing and most recently activities related to information technology are carried on in specialized towns. Some of these functions do not necessarily require the urban center to have any fundamental relationship with their neighboring rural areas. Let us now discuss about city. A city may be regarded as a leading town which has outstripped its local or regional rivals. In the words of Lewis Mumford, the city is in fact the physical form of the highest and most complex type of associative life. Cities are much larger than towns and have a greater number of economic functions. They tend to have transport terminals, major financial institutions and regional administrative offices. When the population crosses the 1 million mark, it is designated as a million city. Let us now talk about what is conurbation. The term conurbation was coined by Patrick Geddes in 1915 and applied to a large area of urban development that resulted from the merging of originally separate towns or cities. The word conurbation has emerged from the words continuous and urban area. C.B. Fawcett, the British geographer, defines a conurbation as an area occupied by a continuous series of dwellings, factories and other buildings including harbours, docks, urban parks and playing fields etc., which are not separated from each other by the rural land. Conurbation is an area of urban development where a number of separate towns have grown into each other and become linked by such factors as common industrial or business interest or a common center of shopping and education. R.E. Dickinson calls it an urban tract, while Jean Gottman, the French geographer, refers to it as an extended city or super metropolitan region. Greater London, Manchester, Chicago and Tokyo are examples of conurbation. In India, conurbations are determined after considering the composite index of density of population per square kilometer, percent of built up area, percent variation of population, number of towns in the urban agglomerations and the manner of working factories. Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai have long been identified as conurbations. A huge conurbation is developing including Delhi and nearby towns and cities. Let us now discuss what is a megalopolis. This Greek word meaning great city was popularized by Jean Gottman in 1957 and signifies super metropolitan region extending as a union of conurbations. It is typically defined as a group of two or more roughly adjacent metropolitan areas which may be somewhat separated or may merge into a continuous urban region. The megalopolis concept became highly influential as it introduced a new, larger scale in thinking about urban patterns and urban growth. The term was coined by Patrick Geddes in his 1915 book Cities in Evolution and used by Oswald Spengler in his 1918 book The Decline of the West and Lewis Mumford in his 1938 book The Culture of Cities, which described it as the first stage in urban overdevelopment and social decline. Later, it was used by Gene Gottman in his landmark 1961 study Megalopolis, the urbanized northeastern seaboard of the United States, and was popularized. Now, let us talk about million cities. The number of million cities in the world has been increasing as never before. The census of 2011 states that there are 53 million plus cities, accounting for 43% of India's urban population. It is projected that 416 million urban dwellers will be added between 2018 and 2050. By 2030, India is expected to be home to 7 megacities with population above 10 million. Now, let us talk about what is an urban agglomeration. An urban agglomeration is a continuous urban spread constituting a town and its adjoining outgrowths, or two or more physically adjoining towns together with or without outgrowths of such towns. An urban agglomeration must consist of at least a statutory town and its total population, that is all the constituents put together, should not be less than 20,000 as per the 2001 census. In varying local conditions, there were similar other combinations which have been treated as urban agglomerations, satisfying the basic condition of contiguity, that is adjoining. Examples: Greater Mumbai urban agglomeration, Delhi urban agglomeration, etc. Let us now deliberate on what are outgrowths. An outgrowth is a viable unit such as a village or a hamlet or an enumeration block made up of such village or hamlet and clearly identifiable in terms of its boundaries and location. Some of the examples are railway colony, university campus, sport area, military camps, etc., which have come up near a statutory town outside its statutory limits, but within the revenue limits of a village or villages contiguous to the town. While determining the outgrowth of a town, it has been ensured that it possesses the urban features in terms of infrastructure and amenities such as pakka roads, electricity, taps, drainage system for disposal of wastewater, etc., educational institutions, post offices, medical facilities, banks, etc., and physically contiguous with the core town of the urban agglomeration. Example: Central Railway Colony, Triveni Nagar, etc. Each such town together with its outgrowth is treated as an integrated urban area and is designated as an urban agglomeration. In 2011 census, 475 places with 981 outgrowths have been identified as urban agglomerations as against 384 urban agglomerations with 962 outgrowths in 2001 census. Let us now discuss what are suburbs. A city's suburbs form a band around the city that has lower population density overall than the city. Secondly, predominantly urban land uses. Unless the city is located near another city, its suburbs end where farmland or open space predominates. The term suburb refers either to the entire band of suburbs around a city or to particular places within a suburban band. The term suburban also can refer to way of life identified with suburbs. Let us now discuss about what we understand by urban growth. According to UNICEF, urban growth refers to the relative or absolute increase in the number of people who live in towns and cities. The pace of urban population growth depends on the natural increase of the urban population and the population gained by urban areas through both net rural-urban migration and the reclassification of rural settlements into cities and towns. The most striking feature of India's urbanization is its long tradition. The emergence of early urban life here is associated with evolution of the Indus Valley civilization around 2500 BC. Some temporal and spatial discontinuities in urban growth and spread, notwithstanding the urbanization process, diffused to other parts of the country under the impact of varied forces operating during the ancient from earlier times to 1206 AD, medieval period that is from 1206 to 1757 AD, and modern period that is 1757 AD till date and periods of Indian history. For that reason, India's urban pattern is a mosaic of segments belonging to pre-colonial, colonial and post-colonial periods. India had a very long history spanning 5 millennia, still it remains one of the less urbanized countries of the world. When it entered the 20th century, it was 1/10 urban. It was around 1/6 urban at the time of independence. During the first half of the 20th century, the process of urbanization was slow, registering an increase in the level of urbanization from 10.84 to 17%. On the other hand, the urban population increased 2.5 times, that is, it increased from 25 million to 32 million. The latter half of the 20th century has been the era of urbanization in developing countries like India in particular. During this period, although the level of urbanization in India increased from 17.29% to 27.78%, the total increase in the urban population of about 4.5 times, that is from 62 million to 285 million during 1951 to 2001 time period. India has the second largest urban population among the countries of the world. In 1991, India had 23 cities with million and more population, which increased to 35 in 2001 and 53 million plus cities as per 2011 census. It is estimated that about 700 million people will reside in urban areas by 2050. Urban growth is spurred by both push and pull factors. The deteriorating agricultural productivity, caste barriers and unemployment in rural areas tend to push the rural inhabitants out. The hope and aspiration for better employment opportunities in cities with high growth rate of industrialization, better income and better living demonstration effects of other migrants pull rural workers into urban centers. During the last 5 decades, the urban population has multiplied. Although rigorous development of urban areas has resulted in temporal comparability of date and many towns were identified, so in earlier census too, as the census data could be used for portraying the size and growth of the urban population. The setting up of industries results in starting up of service units, which in turn boost the opportunities for better employment and overall economic strength of the city. Urbanization affects and is affected by industrialization. Thus, Urban areas are considered as the engines of productivity and growth in the country. This is manifested in the increasing contribution of urban sector. It is estimated that the urban sector contributes more than 50% of India's GDP, highlighting its importance in achieving nation's economic goals. Per capita income in urban areas is relatively higher than in rural areas, which attract the rural dwellers to migrate to cities. This is reflected in the growth of labor force and employment across rural and urban areas. For instance, India's urban sector presently constitutes 63% of India's GDP, which is up from 45% in the year 1990 and has been its key engine of growth acceleration in the past decade. With about 31% of India's population currently urbanized, along with high population density and low GDP per capita, India's urbanization trends have scope to significantly accelerate. In post-independent India, 5-year plans were instrumental in urban growth and development. India's urban development trajectory can be broadly divided into 3 stages. The first stages spanned 15 years, that is first to third 5-year plans, and the approach was fragmented. The first 3 plans were marked by efforts towards housing provisions, slum clearance and rehabilitation. The second 5-year plan provided for the creation of town and country planning laws and initiated planning institutions, after which rigid master plans for a number of cities were developed. 2 state capitals and industrial towns were developed in the third 5-year plan. In fourth, fifth and the sixth 5-year plans, urban planning took a different pathway. Fourth 5-year plan emphasized the need to limit urban population growth. Fifth 5-year plan promoted smaller towns, and the sixth 5-year plan focused on towns, developing roads, pavements, bus stands, markets, etc. Overall, slum clearance gave way to slum improvement, and the emphasis shifted to development of small and medium towns and promoting a balanced regional development. The second phase started in the 1990s, whereby reforms were instituted in the form of 74th Constitutional Amendment 1992, which enabled the devolution of funds, function and functionaries to the urban local bodies. Interest in the development of cities was renewed with the launch of Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission in 2005 across 65 large cities, which was expanded to cover smaller cities also. The last decade of urban reforms has led to emergence of city development plans as a product of the Rural Urban Renewal Mission and Urban Infrastructure Development Scheme for small and medium towns. While master plans continue to be the spatial planning tool with a set of development control regulations enforced by the urban local bodies or the development authorities, CDPs stand as project investment plans for cities with minimal spatial reference. Moreover, there are plans pertaining to different sectors such as transportation, which is city mobility plans, water, sanitation, which is city sanitation plans, drainage, etc. at the city or regional level based on specific institutional jurisdictions. In the first 2 stages, little attention was paid to integration. In fact, integration was lost due to simultaneous existence and functioning of multiple plans. The third phase gets over this and is founded on the idea that cities are complex ecosystem where different elements and actors are interconnected, influence one another and are also influenced and they interact. A key strategy is to allow for cross-sectoral integration, complementing the existing focus on single sector interventions. Some of the single sector interventions are Swachh Bharat Mission and Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, popularly called as AMRIT. On the other hand, the Smart Cities Mission is based on integrated planning and implementation. Integration is the new paradigm ushered in by the third stage of urban development. Thus, multiple factors contributed in urban growth and development. However, several challenges also accompanied urban growth. Let us now discuss the problems of urban areas. People migrate to cities in search of better employment opportunities and civic amenities. Since most cities in developing countries are unplanned, it creates severe congestion. Shortage of housing, vertical expansion and growth of slums are characteristic features of modern cities of developing countries which severely impact environment. In many cities, an increasing proportion of the population lives in substandard housing, that is, slums and squatter settlements. In most million-plus cities in India, 1 in 4 inhabitants lives in illegal settlements which are growing twice as fast as the rest of the cities. The patterns of urbanization in India has been manifested in regional and interstate diversities, lopsided regional development, large-scale rural to urban migration, pressure on infrastructural facilities, growth of slums and other allied problems. Urban areas have been an instrument of economic, social and political progress. However, there are also serious socio-economic problems. The rapid growth of urban population, both natural and through migration, has put heavy pressure on public utilities like housing, sanitation, transport, water, electricity, health and education and so on. Urban areas in India have expanded rapidly as increasing number of people migrate to towns and cities in search of economic opportunity. Slums now account for significant part of all urban housing. Meeting the needs of India's soaring urban population is and will therefore continue to be a strategic policy matter. Critical issues that need to be addressed include poor local governance, weak finances, inappropriate planning that leads to high cost of housing and office space. In some Indian cities, these costs are among the highest in the world. Critical infrastructure shortages and major service deficiencies that include erratic water and power supply and woefully inadequate transportation systems. Further, there is rapidly deteriorating environment. Cities and towns play important role in promoting economic growth and prosperity since they generate over 2/3 of the country's income and accounts for major revenues. Nevertheless, the pace and momentum of economic growth can be sustained only if cities function efficiently, that their resources are used to maximize the city's contribution to national income. The decreasing employment opportunities in the rural as well as smaller urban areas of the developing countries consistently push the population to the urban areas. The enormous migrant population generates a pool of unskilled and semi-skilled labor force which is already saturated in urban areas. Cities in the developing countries suffer from several social ills. Insufficient financial resources fail to create adequate social infrastructure catering to the basic needs of the huge population. The available educational and health facilities remain beyond the reach of the urban poor. Health indices also present a gloomy picture in cities of developing countries. Lack of employment and education tends to aggravate the crime rates. Male selective migration to urban areas distorts the sex ratio in these cities. The large urban population in developing countries not only uses but also disposes of a huge quantity of water and all types of waste materials. Many cities of the developing countries even find it extremely difficult to provide the minimum required quantity of potable water and water for domestic and industrial uses. An improper sewerage system creates unhealthy conditions. Massive use of traditional fuel in the domestic as well as the industrial sector severely pollutes the air. The domestic and industrial waste are either let into general sewages or dumped without treatment at unspecified locations. Urban is defined as an area with a large number of people residing in it with high population density, an area that has been significantly developed. Urban is in contrast to rural, which generally indicates a low population and is mostly agriculture based. Cities and towns are part of urban settlements. All places with a municipality, corporation, cantonment board or notified town area committee, etc., so declared by a state law are called statutory towns. Places which satisfy the following criteria are called census towns: a minimum population of 5,000, at least 75% of male working population engaged in non-agricultural pursuits, and a density of population of at least 400 persons per square kilometer, that is 1000 per square mile. The definition of urban areas varies from one country to another. The common basis of classification is size of population, occupational structure and administrative setup. Depending on the size and the services available and functions rendered, the urban centers are designated as town, city, million city, conurbation and megalopolis. In 1991, India had 23 cities with million and more population, which increased to 35 in 2001 and 53 million plus cities as per 2011 census. It is estimated that about 700 million people will reside in urban areas by 2050. Urban growth is spurred by both push and pull factors.